President Trump is holding a rally in Pensacola, Florida next week, just miles from Alabama, Bloomberg reports. The rally will be 4 days before Alabama's special U.S. Senate election featuring Roy Moore and Doug Jones. Why it matters: Steve Bannon plans to campaign for Republican Roy Moore next week as well. Trump's visit may draw more attention to Moore, who is under intense scrutiny for a number of UAL harassment allegations, without explicitly campaigning for him. Trump had denied having, or being aware of, any contact with the Russians during the campaign, which would have been highly unusual. Reaching out to foreign governments during transitions is more standard procedure. Background: a court document signed by Flynn, who pleaded guilty on Friday to lying to the FBI, says a very senior members of the presidential transition team directed Flynn to contact officials from foreign governments, including Russia. Go deeper: how the FBI probe got to Jared. What they're saying: it is quite a feat for Republicans to have designed a bill that could alienate Obama-Trump voters, Romney-Clinton voters and base Democrats all at the same time, but the tax plan achieves exactly this trifecta, they write. If Democrats properly seize this issue, they can potentially win over most every swath of the electorate critical to next year's midterm elections. Mook and Weaver's argument: the tax measure contradicts Trump's anti-swamp rhetoric. The bill lavishes new tax cuts on the wealthiest Americans and corporations that voters already think do not pay their fair share by protecting special interests, like the carried interest loophole. It eliminates the state and local tax deduction SALT, which will create tax hikes on suburban households in states like New York, California, New Jersey and Pennsylvania, all places that could well determine control of the House in 2018. It includes a sneaky repeal of the Affordable Care Act's individual mandate, which would cause premium hikes averaging 10%. The Republican tax plan is the rare piece of legislation that manages to provide something for nearly everyone to hate, they said. Sen. Bob Corker will vote against the Senate GOP tax bill, saying it adds too much to the federal deficit. The Joint Committee on Taxation said yesterday it will add more than $1 trillion over the next decade when taking into account economic growth. Key quote: I am not able to cast aside my fiscal concerns and vote for legislation that I believe could deepen the debt burden on future generations. Why it matters: it doesn't. The bill is on track to pass 5,149 later today. Sen. Susan Collins released a statement Friday afternoon in support of the Senate's tax reform bill, raising confidence that the bill will pass through the Senate Friday evening. Key quote: I will cast my vote in support of the Senate tax reform bill. As revised, this bill will provide much-needed tax relief and simplification for lower and middle-income families, while spurring the creation of good jobs and greater economic growth. Go deeper: here are the new changes to the Senate tax bill. Why it matters: this legislation sets up next week as a strong pro-Israel week for the administration and Republicans on Capitol Hill, but it's a week that is likely to make the peace process with Palestinians even harder. On Wednesday, Trump is scheduled to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. The White House also hosts its Hanukkah party next week. The Zionist Organization of America told Axios it reluctantly supports the present version of the Taylor Force Act, even though it's been considerably weakened from its original version. At Google, employees were shocked to see one another at a Republican election night party, and agreed not to acknowledge one another at work afterward for fear that their support for Mr. Trump might be revealed, WSJ reports. Veterans at Pinterest downplay their military background out of concerns that colleagues will assume they are conservative.